Happy Friday. Good afternoon from the Shreveport office of Eagle Financial Management Services for another edition of the Jack and Bill Show. Just wanted to remind our viewers to take a look at last week's episode. We had Eric Crittenden from the Standpoint Multi-Asset Fund, Standpoint Funds in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona. We had a really good time with him. His fund has just been rocking so far this year and last year, and I think what makes it interesting is the discussion that he makes about these things called alternatives and trend following and systematic investing. So since then, we've kind of been back and forth this week with the stock market. The stock market giving up anywhere from 0.5% to 1.25%, whether you're talking about small caps or large caps. The S&P 500 was up year to date 12.6%. That means on a total return basis with dividends reinvested. But we gave some of that back today, about 0.7% coming into the close. So year to date, we're just up just under 12%. You know, Bill, that's like a year's worth of returns already so far this year. Russell 2000 small cap index down 1.25% today. The NASDAQ down 0.85%. The Dow Jones down a little more than 0.5%. Gold closed at $17.67 an ounce, down 90 cents. Call that flat. West Texas Intermediate, $63.42 a barrel, down $1.52, or about 2.5%. You know, interestingly, I find that United States gross domestic product was up sharply in the news yesterday. So our economy, in the third quarter 2020, it went up 33.4%, bouncing from the second quarter, which was lost almost a third, Bill, down 31.4%. And then continuing to grow in Q4, and Q1 just came in at 6.4% growth in U.S. gross domestic product. So, that's about 3 times the rate of growth of normal economic growth that we've had, for the last 10 years.
And it was expected.
And it is expected because we've got rates pushed down to zero and just a ton of stimulus money thrown at this thing.
And this is the snapback after the pandemic lockdowns.
Yeah, that's right. And then, but we've got some news coming out on, before we get into the meat of what we want to talk about today, the Biden tax plan, this really a redistribution of wealth, looking at taxing people that have $1 million in income or more on capital gains of over 43%. So when you add state taxes to that, if you come from a high tax state like California or New York, that gets into the mid 50s, and you don't even keep half of what you make. The other big thing that I see in here, and I don't think the markets, really like this at all, but historically, when a person dies, we don't give tax advice, but this is the way it is. On estates up to roughly $10 million, when a person dies, they can pass that tax-free to their heirs. So there's a roll-up in the cost basis. If you had $100,000 and it grew to $1 million, you could pass that $900,000 on to your kids or whoever you wanted to, tax-free. Or if it was $1 million and grew to $10 million, same thing. Now they want to make it to where this is the proposal. The big question is whether this gets passed or not. But the exemption stops at $1 million, and on all estates, you're taxed on the growth. So
Yeah, and this is not political commentary, but what this can do is affect behavior of investors, and we could see accelerated selling of equities prior to hikes in capital gains taxes. So that could happen. Now, this is, the proposal is it's only going to affect, the ultra high net worth investors. But, we'll see. This may not even get passed. And I'm sure it will be adjusted. What eventually does get passed, if anything, will not look like the current proposal. That's just my opinion.
yeah, and I hope so. And I think you're likely right about that. Well, Bill, okay, well, let's transition into an educational talk today. Am I right?
Well, I mean, gosh, after that somber discussion, let's just stay in the somber, melancholy mode here.
We've got the weather for it
yeah,
today.
the weather is certainly that way. Good day to just stay at home and watch movies. No, I saw some data that came out of the Federal Reserve, and it was a survey showing it was the percentage of households in America that could not afford to pay for a $400 emergency. Okay, so a $400 emergency, that could be a lot of things. It could be, your refrigerator goes out, anything. Okay, $400. Well, based on the data that the Fed gathered, 16% of millennials could not afford that. 14% of Gen Xers could not, 8% of boomers. And for everyone surveyed, it's about 12%. So 12% of American households could not afford to pay for a $400 emergency. And okay, this is where savings comes in, and this is something that we want to preach and preach and preach, and that is the importance of saving, to cover unexpected emergencies, to prepare for eventual retirement, to prepare for large purchases down the road, or to finance a house or a college education, whatever that may be.
Bill, I'd like to jump in here and just add, because I think of 16% of millennials. So many millennials are strapped with student loan debt.
Correct.
There's an article on the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, "Inside the Fight Over Student Loan Losses." It says a banker who studied the program sees deficit of $500 billion as borrowers fail to repay. And, there's a discussion with the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. The government had actually hidden some of these numbers and not letting America know how bad this situation, really is. So this is at the forefront right now. And, you're not going to, if you have a savings plan, Bill.
Hold it. Hidden numbers?
Yeah.
Are we talking about nursing home deaths in New York, or are we talking about student loans?
Well, I'm talking about our student loan situation. We have $500 billion in deficits from mostly millennials who aren't making their payments. And I don't think it would be a good signal to, that was a discussion during the political debates about wiping the slate clean. Anyway, I'm sorry for the interruption.
No, that certainly adds to the discussion, and the imperative to build up savings, build up an investment portfolio. Savings is, I think, for a lot of people, it can seem out of reach. It can seem as a luxury. Okay, for someone who's struggling, just to get by, just to pay the bills, the thought of setting aside money in savings or investing can really just seem out of reach. But it doesn't have to be that way. And we always tell people that when you are saving, yes, you are deferring consumption, meaning that instead of spending money on something today, you're setting it aside for your future. So in essence, you are paying yourself first. And it does involve discipline. But if someone were to, look at their spending habits, create a simple budget, and if they were to say, okay, when I get paid, maybe they get paid every 2 weeks. Okay, when I get my paycheck every 2 weeks, I'm going to take this amount. It doesn't even have to be a large amount. And I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to put it in the bank. And I'm going to forget about it. I'm paying myself first. Then I will pay the mortgage company, the utilities, the grocery store, the gas stations, etc. But it is a discipline, and over time it does work. And we wanted to show you how it works through an illustration on compound interest. I think everyone understands this concept of simple interest. Well, we want to discuss compound interest and compare the two. So compound interest or compounding interest, it's calculated on the initial principal or investment amount plus interest on interest. Okay, so what are we talking about here? All right, so I have a little chart that I whipped up. And for this example, let's say that you put $100 in the bank and you earn 5% per year. Now, that's impossible these days. But for illustration purposes, let's say that the bank will pay you 5% a year, and you're going to keep it in there for 5 years. So every year, if it's simple interest, you're earning 5% on your original principal. Okay, so this is what that looks like. So after year one, your $100, you earn 5%. So at the end of year one, you have $105. So what do you have at the end of year two? Well, you're earning another 5% on your original 100. So now you have $110, and so on and so forth. So 5 years of interest, simple interest, that's 5 times $50. So your $100 ends up at $125. That's simple interest. Now here's compound interest. So with compound interest, you're earning interest on your principal, your deposit, your investment, but you're also earning interest on the interest. So the calculation is your $100 times 1 plus the interest rate, 5%. So the year one result is the same as simple interest, but look at year two. At year two, because your ending balance at year one is $105, your beginning balance for this computation in year two is $105. And then you take your 105 times 1 plus the interest rate. And now at the end of year two, you have $110.25. Okay, so you can see how it's building. And you continue to do this year after year. And in this example, after 5 years, you end up with $127.63, as opposed to $125 if you're using a simple interest calculation. Now, that may not seem like much, but we're only talking about $100. But if the numbers are bigger, that makes a big difference.
Yes, it does, Bill.
Now, let's say we go further in time. So that was just a 5-year example. Let's say that you're investing, and let's assume that you make a 10% per annum return. Now, that's about what the U.S. stock market has done over the long run. It doesn't mean we're going to see that going forward, but let's just keep the numbers simple. 10% compounded annually. So I have here on this chart a simple interest calculation and a compound interest calculation, and you can see over different time periods. So if we start with $10,000 and it's growing at 10% per year, well, if it's just simple interest on that, after 30 years, you have $40,000. Well, if it's compounding after 30 years because you're earning interest on your principal and your interest, it ends up at $174,464. So after 30 years earning 10% a year, $10,000, that's it. You don't add any more to it. $10,000 grows into almost $175,000. That's the power of compounding. And everyone can and should be doing that.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to do that is electronically on a whatever your pay period is, or on a monthly basis, or something like that.
Right. And let me just add this. These are the variables that will affect the level of compound interest you will receive, and it's a mathematical calculation. I mean, you can use a financial calculator, but you don't even need a financial calculator. You can go online, and for free, there are plenty of time value of money calculators that you can use, and you can plug in a dollar amount, an initial amount, even plug in subsequent deposit amounts and use an interest rate assumption. And these online calculators will show you what that expected present value will be. But these are the variables that will affect that. One is the amount that you're investing. So obviously, the more that you can invest today and over time, that will affect your future value. The other is the interest rate. So the higher rate of return that you can earn, the higher the future value will be. Given where we are, we would urge people to be a little more conservative with the return assumptions. 10% is probably high right now, wouldn't you say, Jack?
Well, I mean, 10%, yes, is what the blue chip stock market has done historically for a long period of time, but we have high valuations
That's
right
correct. So that's why we would say be more conservative in your calculations and use a lower assumed rate of return. The other is compounding frequency. This comes into play at banks. If you put money on deposit at a bank, you can negotiate the compounding frequency that's used. The more frequent the compounding, the better the future value. If it's annual compounding, that's great. But if you could get monthly or weekly or even daily compounding, the money will grow even faster. And then the last variable is time. So the longer your money stays working for you, the higher the expected future value. Okay,
now.
Jack, you got your financial calculator out.
No, I was just following you there. I was going to mention there's an interesting thing here called the rule of 72, and this the rule of 72 is not exact, but I'll give you some examples here. If you just take the number 72 and you're curious, how long does it take to double my money? Well, under the rule of 72, if you take the percentage amount that you're earning, like
Let's say 10%.
in your example, you use 10%, you divide the 10 into 72, it would take 7.2 years. Or another example would be if you make 15% on your money, 15% into 72 is approximately 5 years.
Well, I mean that's pretty close, Jack, because on this example, where we do use a financial calculation, a 10% rate of return, you double your $10,000 investment. You can see here between year 5 and 10. So that rule of 72 is pretty close.
That's good, Bill.
Yeah, I was thinking about now this is something that you had experience with, Jack. Back in Legg Mason days. Tell us about the example of the value trust and how money grew and compounded.
We had Bill Miller III, who's legendary, beat the stock market 15 years in a row, and no mutual fund has ever done that. Net of fees, and I think it was either my largest holding or second largest holding in my 15-year career at Legg Mason before I came here. The Legg Mason Value Trust, we went through a powerful period in the stock market from January. Consider this period, and I remember this because I lived it. January 1, 1995 through 12/31, 1999. That's 5 years coming into Y2K. The new millennium reminds me a lot of today with the exuberance in tech stocks, things like Tesla, Bitcoin, and so forth. Tech stocks, anyway. The S&P 500 compounded at 28% per year. 28% per year. So if you did that, use the rule of 72 on that. You're doubling your money in 2.6 years at according to that. Anyway, that's not precise, but we had a lot of people. We encouraged our clients to, this is a fund that was no load in, no load out. And you had a diversified portfolio of about 35 to 50 large cap stocks, which is kind of...
Now the loads, those are sales charges.
Correct.
So people were putting money into the fund without a deduction for a sales charge.
That's right. You could buy it today and sell it tomorrow, and there's no transaction fee or penalty. So the monies were liquid. And this fund actually started... 1981, 1982, right in there with the advent of the $2,000 IRA, the beginning of individual retirement accounts. Back then, you could put $2,000 in. And but anyway, from that period, 1/1/95 to 12/31/99, $1 invested in the Legg Mason Value Trust run by William H. Miller III turned into $5.02. Now, if you can use a financial calculator to do the math, but that is a compounded return of over 40% per annum. $1 turning into $5.02 net of all fees in a 5-year period. And then, of course, we went into the tech bubble burst, and we had the market decline by 50%. But still, if you had $100,000 that turned into $500,000, it would have come back to $250,000. It would have gone back up to new highs
eventually.
Yeah, not too much, not too long after that.
This is as an aside. This is the same Bill Miller whose son we interviewed in the fall.
Yeah, correct. So,
well, again, we just want to, highlight the importance of saving, investing, planning for the future, and the reality that you don't need a lot of money to get started. It's very easy now. Through electronic transfer systems, payroll deduction. Like, for example, if you're able to participate in a retirement savings plan at work, you can have monies deducted from your paycheck and put into retirement savings. So the technology is in place for you to do this and do this very easily. Do it.
Yeah, I've just while you were sitting here discussing this with them, Bill, I just do the math on my HP 12C. And so let's just say that you're 30 years old.
I'm a Texas Instruments guy myself.
If you're a 30-year-old and you want to work for 35 years, so you quit work at 65. Bill, I just turned 60.
You didn't have to say that.
Yeah. So I'm going to work way past 65 because I love what I'm doing. But anyway, let's just say you're 30 years old and you want to work 35 years and retire when you hit 65. So just to make the math easy to show you, I just did this in 5 seconds. what would it take to have you have nothing in savings at your age 30 right now, nothing in savings, and we look at use your 10% example or what the stock market has done historically. Um, what would you have to save on an annual basis to get to $1 million at age 65 if you start right now? Or just say whatever your age is, you want to get $1 million 35 years from now into the future. You have to say, if you assuming we compounded at 10%, that's $3,689.71 a year, or divide that by 12, you have to save $307.47 a month. So if you save, call it 300, you save $300 a month. You can have that electronically deposited into your Schwab institutional account with Eagle Financial, done through a program called MoneyLink. We just need a voided check from you. $300 a month, done electronically, 12 times a year, 35 years, you've got over $1 million.
Now, you do your part, put the money aside. We do our part, manage the investment of it.
So you do $1,000 a month, and you're going to wind up with, between $3 and $4 million, which you may need that much to retire on 35 years from now. If I have a feeling inflation is going to be running higher in the future, like where it's starting to show its head, today. So,
I was telling Wesley earlier, I finally figured out what it is I want to be when I'm older.
What's that?
Younger.
I apologize for the bad jokes.
Golly, Bill. Okay.
Well, I guess that's a wrap. And we invite anyone to call, message us if you have questions about what we discussed today. Using the technology, we can help you, putting a pen to paper, so to speak, and figuring out just how much you need to set aside to reach a goal in the future, and using an assumption of interest rates. So let us help you.
That's good, Bill. Okay. Well, we will see you next Friday, and thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, make good decisions, and watch out for low-flying aircraft.